Well, hello and welcome back to the final exam review series for intermediate algebra. This is Joe Brownlee with Palm Beach State. We are on question number 28. So let's jump right in. All right, so the directions for number 28 are decide whether the pair of lines is parallel, perpendicular, or neither. All right. And the lines they give us, the equations are 3x minus 4y equals 17 and 8x plus 6y equals negative 6. All right, we're going to set that aside. Well, before we start solving and just determining whether these lines are parallel or perpendicular, let's talk about lines for a second. Well, what is parallel? What do parallel lines look like? Well, parallel lines look like this, right? They never intersect. And what type of slope do parallel lines have? Well, they have the same slope. And so let's say that the first line here had a slope of 3 over 4. Well, then the second line here would also have a slope of 3 over 4. All right, well, what are perpendicular lines? What do those look like? Well, perpendicular lines do intersect, and they intersect in a specific way. They are exact opposites of each other. And in fact, they have what are known as opposite reciprocal slopes. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's say this line here has a slope of, I don't know, let's say 4 over 5. Opposite reciprocal means that we take the opposite sign and then we flip the fraction. So if the second line here had an opposite reciprocal slope, if the original slope is positive, this slope is going to be negative. That's what opposite means. We flip the sign. And then reciprocal, you'll recall, just means flip the fraction. So if we started with a positive 4 over 5, an opposite reciprocal slope would be negative 5 over 4. And then lastly, we will have lines that intersect, but they're neither the same slope nor are they opposite reciprocal. So the first line here could have a slope of 2/3, and this line here could have a slope of 1/2. Doesn't matter. It just means that so long as the slopes are not the same and they're not opposite reciprocals, they are neither. All right, let me go ahead and label this. So these are parallel, perpendicular, and neither. All right, so now that we know what type of slopes parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and lines that are neither parallel or perpendicular have, let's go ahead and go back to our original two equations and start to determine what type of lines these are. And the way that we do that is we take the equations, which have been given to us in standard form, and we are going to rewrite these equations in slope-intercept form, which you'll recall is y equals mx plus b. And the reason we want to put it in slope-intercept form is because in this form we are easily able to see what the slope of the line is. And that's, of course, what we are comparing here. We're trying to determine what the slopes of the lines are here so we know if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So let's go ahead and start with this first equation and start solving it for y and put it into y equals mx plus b form. So the first thing I would do would be to subtract 3x from both sides. And when I do that, I get negative 4y equals negative 3x plus 17. And lastly, when I divide by -4 on both sides, I get y equals -3 over -4 is a positive 3 over 4x minus 17 over 4. So the slope for our first equation is positive 3 over 4. All right, well, let's go ahead now and solve for our second equation and see what the slope of this line is. Again, if I'm solving for y, I want to isolate y, so the first thing I'm going to do is move my 8x. And when I do that, I get 6y equals -8x minus 6. When I divide by 6 on both sides to solve for y, I get y equals -8 over 6 x minus 1. But I can reduce this fraction here, can't I? So, let's see. 2 goes into both 8 and 6, doesn't it? So how many times does 2 go into -8? Well, it goes in -4 times. How many times does 2 go into 6? Well, it goes in positive 3 times. And so we get -4 over 3x minus 1. And so I can see now that the slope of the second equation is -4 over 3. Well, what did we just talk about with regards to slopes, right? Lines that have opposite reciprocal slopes, positive 3 over 4, -4 over 3, are what? They are perpendicular. And so these two lines are perpendicular. I had to make sure I spelled it right. All right. So that's not too bad, right? So what you're going to do when we're determining parallel, perpendicular, or neither is take your equation, which generally will be given to you in standard form, and rewrite the equation solving for y so that you can put it into y equals mx plus b, and that way you can easily identify your slope. And from there you're just comparing your slope. Are they the same? Did we get m equals 3 over 4, m equals 3 over 4? No, we got m equals 3 over 4, m equals -4 over 3, and so that is a perpendicular line. But maybe this one was m equals 3 over 4, and this one is m equals 2 over 3, or 5 over 6, or some other combination. If it's neither, then these lines are simply neither. All right, well, that was question number 28. We are going to move along to question number 29. Again, this is Joe Brownlee with Palm Beach State. Thanks for watching.